The gleaming marble floors of Orion Tech Towers reflected everything: power, success, and control. But when Arman Malik stepped out of the executive elevator that morning, none of those things mattered. Not when his eyes locked onto the woman on her knees in a gray uniform, scrubbing a stain by the reception desk. She didn't look up, didn't even seem to notice the sharp silence that followed his footsteps. Her hair was tied back in a careless knot, her hands moved with mechanical purpose, but Arman froze, his chest tightened, his throat dried. No, it couldn't be those eyes. They were older now, wiser, a little worn. But he could never mistake them, not after all these years, not after burying them behind layers of ambition and forgotten letters. "Olya?" he whispered before he could stop himself. She looked up. For a second her gaze met his, a flash of recognition, then something else. Pain. Olya stood, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to get in your way." "Sir?" The word hit like a slap. Arman Malik, CEO of a tech empire, stared at the only woman he ever truly loved, and realized he might have already lost her again. Arman Malik couldn't move. For someone known in the business world for lightning, fast decisions, billion-dollar mergers, and a cold, analytical mind, he suddenly stood paralyzed, like a statue among the moving bodies in the sleek lobby of Orion Tech Towers. The woman Olya had already turned away. She resumed scrubbing the floor as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just shattered 20 years of silence in a single glance. Margaret, his executive assistant, walked briskly toward him, tablet in hand. "Sir, your 9 a.m. with the German investors is waiting in. Reschedule it," Arman said, his voice hoarse, eyes fixed on the woman. Margaret blinked. "Sir, reschedule it," he repeated, finally tearing his eyes away and turning toward the executive elevator. He needed air, he needed answers. 15 minutes later, Arman's office took up the entire top floors. Sleek, minimalistic, and intentionally sterile. He usually loved the silence up here, but now it echoed too loudly. He poured himself a glass of water, but his hand trembled slightly as he gripped the glass. Olya Khan. The last time he'd seen her was in the dusty lanes of old Rawalpindi, under a mango tree, tears streaming down her face as he climbed into the backseat of a rented car. His father's orders had been final. "Ye laki humare lo, yakno, hi. She's not worthy of our name." She had begged him to stay. He had promised he'd return for her, but he never did. 20 years earlier he was 19. She was 18. She wore a simple white shalwar camise, her dupe at a half, tucked into a school bag slung over her shoulder. He remembered how her eyes lit up whenever he brought her a cup of chai from the corner dhaba near the university library. She dreamed of becoming a journalist. He dreamed of building something big, bigger than anything his family name already represented. They were poor, reckless dreams, but they were each other's world. Until the day his father found out. Olya's family was middle class, respectable, yes, but not elite, not industrialist enough. His father, Iftikhar Malik, who'd clawed his way into the country's top 10 business families, didn't care for such love stories. Within 2 days, Arman was on a flight to London. No goodbye, no closure, no choice. Present day back in the lobby, Arman returned to the lobby, suit jacket unbuttoned, expression unreadable. He scanned the staff ID badges. One name, Clean Tech Services Olya K. He walked straight to the front desk. "Who's the supervisor for Clean Tech's crew?" The receptionist, startled, fumbled with her system. "I'm Mr. Akram. He's in the building today. Call him. Tell him I need a word, now." Within minutes, a lanky man in a neon vest appeared, nerves clear in his posture. "Sir, the woman working near the main entrance today," Arman said calmly. "Her name is Olya Khan." "Yes, sir. Been with us 3 years. Excellent worker. Never late." Arman's jaw tightened. "I want her reassigned from this building, immediately." The supervisor hesitated. "Sir, if I may." "She didn't break any. It's not disciplinary." Arman interrupted. "It's a conflict of interest." He saw Olya glance up briefly from across the lobby, then quickly look away. He clenched his fists. He couldn't breathe in this building anymore. Later that evening, outside her apartment, Oliya's apartment was in a working-class neighborhood in Queens. Arman sat in his black sedan, staring at the faded blue door for a full 10 minutes before finally stepping out. He knocked, no answer. He knocked again. This time she opened the door, barefoot, wearing an old kurta, a faint smell of doll in the air behind her. She didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said simply. "I had to see you." She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. "You've seen me now. Go." "Oliya, I didn't know." Her laugh was hollow. "You didn't know I was scrubbing your floors, or you didn't know I existed at all." He opened his mouth, then closed it. She stepped forward, close enough for him to smell turmeric on her hands. "I begged you to stay. You promised you'd come back. I waited for years. You sent nothing, said nothing." "I wrote letters," he said quietly. "My father, he must have." She shook her head. "Does it matter now? You became what they wanted. I became what I had to." He looked at her, truly looked, and saw everything he had missed, the strength in her eyes, the grief buried under it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Sorry doesn't change anything," she said. "Now go." She turned and went back inside. He didn't stop her. He couldn't. Next morning, Orion Tech Towers Arman arrived early. Earlier than the janitorial staff, earlier than his executives. He stood by the lobby's large glass windows, watching the city wake up, wondering if Oliya would walk through the doors again, and part of him feared she wouldn't. But she did. At exactly 6:42 a.m., her small figure entered the building in her gray uniform. Her expression was calm, distant, professional, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't shattered him the night before. He approached her slowly. The staff were still scattered. No one noticed Oliya. She didn't stop walking. "Please don't talk to me at work." He followed anyway. "I need to explain." "I told you, don't." He stepped in front of her. Then when she looked at him finally, and her words came like ice. "There's nothing to explain. You left. Life moved on." "No," he said softly. "Life didn't move on. I did. But I left part of me behind." Her jaw clenched. "Stop trying to turn this into poetry. You didn't just leave me. You erased me, like I was a mistake." "I never." "You let them take you." She interrupted. "You let them decide I wasn't enough." Arman lowered his head. "I was 19. I was weak." "You're still weak," she snapped, still hiding behind suits and titles. The elevator doors opened and she walked away. He didn't follow. Not this time. 3 days later, an email that changed everything. Oliya sat in her shared break room, sipping chai from a disposable cup when her phone buzzed. Subject: internal position opening admin assistant department. CSR from HR at Oriontech. COM eligibility, internal service staff with 2+ years tenure. Admin certification preferred, fluent English required. She stared at the screen. A job, an actual office job, not scrubbing toilets or buffing floors. A desk, maybe. A nameplate, hours that didn't destroy her knees. Work that might one day lead to more. Her heart raced. Was this him? No. She refused to believe that Arman would manipulate the company's structure. She didn't need his charity. Still, she clicked apply. 2 weeks later, a shift in balance. The interview had been stiff. Professional but fair. Oliya had walked out feeling unsure, until the next morning when her acceptance letter arrived. Starting next Monday, administrative assistant to the CSR director. No mention of special treatment. No glowing words. Just a basic salary, regular hours, and a cubicle with her name on it. That Monday, she entered the 12th floor in a modest blue blouse and black slacks, her first non-uniform work attire in 3 years. Her new manager, MS Karen Lim, gave her a polite tour and handed her a list of daily tasks. By 10:00 a.m., she was deep in spreadsheets, trying to ignore the buzzing in her ears and the voice in her mind that whispered, "You don't belong here." At 11:15 a.m., She received an internal message from A. Malik at Oriontech. Com subject: "Congratulations, just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Let me know if you need anything." Arman, she stared at the message. She didn't reply, but a tear rolled silently onto her keyboard. 1 month later, a faint crack in the ice they had barely spoken, a hallway nod, a shared glance in the elevator. Once he held the door open and she murmured thanks without looking at him. Until the day her computer crashed, Alia stood in the corner of the floor, trying to reboot the old machine. Karen had gone for lunch. IT was delayed. Then Arman appeared, no suit jacket, sleeves rolled up. "Need help?" She hesitated. "You're the CEO, you don't fix desktops." He smiled faintly. "Once upon a time I coded them." She sighed. "I didn't ask for this promotion, I earned it." "I know," he said. "It's why I let HR handle it. I stayed out of it." She looked at him for a long time. "Why?" He took a breath. "Because I know how strong you are, and I want you to know it too." She blinked away the heat rising behind her eyes. Then, without another word, she stepped aside and let him fix her system. Later that night, a memory she couldn't shake, Alia sat on her small balcony, legs curled under her, sipping chai. She thought about the boy who used to chase her through rain-wrenched alleyways, the one who once wrote her a poem on an exam sheet and slipped it under her door, the one who had held her hand behind the school bus, whispering, "Ek din main tum, Herr Lee, I duni your jeet lunga, one day I'll win the world for you." That boy had vanished in a black car with tinted windows, but now a man had returned, a powerful one, a broken one, and somehow still her Arman. 3 weeks later, company charity gala invitation. The email subject line blinked at her all morning. Subject: "You're invited, annual Oriontech Foundation Gala Ollie." His first thought was, this wasn't meant for me. She clicked it anyway. Black tie, formal attire, RSVP required, open to all internal departments. Special recognition for standout new hires. Her heart dropped. She knew exactly what this was. He was inviting her. Or testing her, or maybe neither. Maybe it was just a company-wide email, and she was letting old wounds imagine a hidden message behind it. Still, she didn't delete it. Same day, Arman's office, 30th floor, "She won't come." Arman said, staring out the window at the skyline. "Not unless she's ready." Margaret raised an eyebrow as she placed a file on his desk. "And if she doesn't come at all?" He turned, hands in his pockets. "Then I wait." "Wait for what exactly? For her to forgive you? For her to forget that you left her behind without a single goodbye?" Arman's jaw clenched. "I never meant to leave." Margaret sighed, softer now. "Maybe she doesn't want to be saved, Arman. Maybe she wants to rise on her own terms. She already is," he said quietly. That evening, Oli's apartment, Rita, her roommate and oldest friend in New York, leaned over the email and scoffed. "Girl, if you don't go, I swear I'll disown you." "It's not that simple," Olia muttered, sipping chai. "You've worked your way up from night janitor to desk job in the biggest tech firm in Manhattan. You're doing it, you're rising, and now they're asking you to show up in a dress and eat free shrimp. It's not just a party," Olia said. "It's his party." Rita paused. "You're still in love with him." Olia didn't answer. She didn't have to. Saturday night, the gala, the venue was grand, a luxury ballroom glittering with crystal chandeliers and polished marble. CEO mingled with directors, the air thick with expensive perfume and power plays. When Olia entered, heads turned, not because of who she was, but because of how she carried herself. She wore a deep emerald green dress Rita had altered for her. Simple, elegant, the kind that made you look once for the color, twice for the woman wearing it. Arman saw her instantly. He excused himself mid-conversation and crossed the floor, the noise around him fading as he reached her. "You came," he said, apparently. She replied coolly, though her heart was pounding in her ears. "You look—" He stopped, "like yourself." Finally, she gave a half-smile. "I wasn't aware I'd ever been someone else. Life has a way of burying people," he said. "I'm just glad you dug your way out." They stood in silence for a beat. Then she said, "Don't make me regret this." He held out his hand. "One dance, that's all. No speeches, no confessions, just one dance." She looked at his hand, then into his eyes, and took it. On the dance floor, memory returns. The music was slow. Jazz, maybe. She didn't recognize the tune, but her feet moved on their own. His hand on her waist was warm, familiar. The ballroom blurred into shadows. She whispered, "Do you remember our last dance?" He nodded. "Your cousin's wedding. We almost tripped over the DJ wires. You said you'd marry me." "I meant it." She looked away. "And yet," he sighed. "And yet." They danced in silence. Sometimes silence said more than 1,000 apologies. After the gala on the balcony, the stars were faint in the New York sky, but the city lights sparkled below like a map of second chances. They stood side by side on the balcony, glasses of ginger ale in hand. "I thought of you," he said, "more times than I can count." Olea didn't respond. "I tried to build something big enough to drown the guilt," he continued, "but no building's tall enough to outpace memory." She looked at him. "You don't get to rewrite the ending, Armin." "I don't want to rewrite it," he said. "I want to start a new chapter. And what if I don't want that?" He paused. "Then I'll let you go. For real this time. But not until I know you're saying no to me, not to the pain I caused." She stared out into the night. Her voice was steady but soft. "I don't know yet. I can wait." Later that night, a message left unsent back in her apartment. Olea sat on the edge of her bed, holding her phone. The message draft had only 4 words, "Thank you for tonight." Her thumb hovered over the send button. Then she hit delete. Not yet. 1 week later, new trouble. Olea's desk had been moved. Again, her emails were being rerouted. Her access was restricted for updates. Her internal messages returned with auto-replies. Rumors whispered through the cubicles. She went straight to HR. "I don't want to play victim," she said, "but someone is making it clear that I'm not welcome here." HR gave her polite nods and vague promises. Nothing changed until Armin walked into the customer service floor unannounced, a rare break in his usual protocol. He looked around, eyes landing on a desk near the storage closet again. He turned to the floor manager. "Fix this today." "But," I said, "today." Then he turned to Olea. "Don't let them shrink your space. You belong here." She didn't thank him, but she didn't argue either. 5 days later, unfinished conversations. Olea stood at the breakroom sink, rinsing her teacup when Armin entered unannounced. Not in a suit today, just a crisp, rolled-up shirt, no tie, no performance. The kind of look that didn't belong to the CEO, but to the boy she once knew. "I need 10 minutes, he said. "Armin, not for us," he said quickly, "for closure, please." She sighed and dried her hands on a paper towel. "Fine, 10 minutes. Somewhere no one will see." He nodded. "My driver's outside." She paused. "I'm not getting into your expensive car. It's just a ride." She hesitated, then followed. The car, a confession 20 years overdue. The black sedan hummed quietly as it cruised away from the office. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally, Armin opened the glove box and handed her a small envelope. Worn, slightly yellowed, addressed in familiar handwriting. Her heart stopped. "This is your writing?" He nodded. "I sent you letters, one every month for a year after I left. I never got them, I know," he said bitterly. "I found out 2 years ago. My father, he intercepted everything, paid the post office in Islamabad to reroute anything with my handwriting or a UK return address. Said he'd protect the family name at all costs." Olea's hands trembled. "I thought you forgot me," she whispered. "I thought you stopped loving me," he said. She opened the envelope. Inside was the first letter he'd written. The ink was faded, but the words were clear. "Olea, they pulled me away, but I'm coming back. I don't care what it costs. I'll find a way. Wait for me. Just a little longer." Tears spilled onto her lap. "I waited for 3 years. I searched for 5, he said quietly, "but your family moved. Your number changed. I went back to Rawalpindi twice. They said you had left the country." "I did," she whispered. I followed a scholarship to Canada, and then I didn't have the strength to go looking. They sat in silence as the truth settled like dust between them. Outside the bookstore, a ghost from the past, they stopped in front of a small Urdu bookstore in Brooklyn. It was empty and dim, but the shelves were still there. This used to be the only place I came to feel at home, Arman said. She stepped inside. The smell of old pages hit her like a wave. He handed her a book from the shelf, an Urdu poetry collection. I used to buy these and read them out loud to the empty air, pretending you were still listening. She clutched the book like it might fall apart. You kept loving me. I never stopped, he said. Her voice broke. But life moved on. I moved on. He nodded. That's okay. I'm not here to restart where we left off. I'm here to finally finish what we couldn't. Oliya's apartment, one final truth that night. They sat across from each other in her cramped living room. The past had been spilled, the letters, the mistakes, the silences. But one thing still hovered unspoken. I almost got married, she said suddenly. Arman blinked. When, 3 years ago, his name was Sami, an architect. Good man, he loved me. What happened? He said I wasn't fully there, said I lived like a woman who still had a ghost in her heart. She looked at him. He wasn't wrong. Arman closed his eyes. I didn't mean to haunt you. She smiled faintly. You didn't. The memory of what we had did. The next morning, an unexpected offer the next morning at Orient Tech. Oliya received a calendar invite titled Proposal Draft Meeting CSR Pilot Program. She walked in to find Arman and 3 senior managers. He stood up. I'm stepping back from daily operations next quarter. I'm proposing a new community leadership pilot, education outreach, mentorship for low-income hires. He gestured to the screen, and I want you to lead it. Oliya froze. Me, you've worked every floor of this building. You understand the struggles at both ends of the system. You have a business certificate. You've earned this. I'm not ready. Yes, you are. The room went quiet. Will you take it? He asked. She swallowed. If I do this, it's because I believe in it, not because of you. He nodded. That's exactly why I chose you. Later that week, one final letter that Friday, she returned to her desk to find a small envelope waiting. It was sealed with wax. Inside was a single sheet handwritten. Dear Oliya, if this is all, we are 2 people who once loved deeply and now walk side by side as strangers. Then I'll still be grateful, because I found you again. And this time, I didn't lose you to silence. But if there's still a flicker of that old light, let me carry it with you, this time. No fathers to stop us, no countries between us, just choices, yours, if you want me to be, Arman. She stared at it for a long time, then she placed it in her drawer, not discarded, not forgotten, just not answered, not yet. 2 weeks later, whispers in the executive wing. Oliya had been running the new CSR pilot project for just under 2 weeks. Her days were long, filled with calls, mentorship planning, policy drafts, and community partnerships. But the fatigue was different. It was purpose-driven, and yet she noticed the glances, the whispers, the sudden hush when she entered the elevator. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. On Wednesday morning, Margaret caught her in the break room. You're doing good work, she said softly, but someone's stirring trouble upstairs. Oliya frowned. Who? Margaret hesitated. Let's just say Arman isn't the only Malik with power in this company. She didn't need to guess. Samir Malik, Arman's younger brother, the one who handled operations, the one who had always stayed in the shadows. That afternoon, the email leak, the headline dropped just after lunch. Exclusive, Orient Tech CEO cleaning lady given executive role is Arman Malik, sleeping with his staff. Attached was a blurry photo of her and Arman at the charity gala. A few pixels, 1,000 implications. Oliya's inbox exploded. Her phone buzzed non-stop. HR scheduled an emergency meeting. Legal sent her confidentiality protocols. Arman called her. She didn't pick up. Instead, she left the building through the back exit, breathing through a rising panic that threatened to crush her chest. Later that night, the apartment stormed. The knock on her door was hard. Urgent. She opened it to find Arman, eyes tired, hair disheveled, tie loosened. Not the CEO tonight. just a man barely holding it together. "I didn't know this would happen," he said, voice ragged. "I swear." "Of course you didn't," she snapped. "Because people like you never have to think about what happens when they touch the lives of people like me." He stepped back. That hurt him more than a slap. "You think I did this?" he said quietly. "I think your world did," she said, "and maybe you didn't stop it fast enough." He looked down. "I should have protected you. You should have thought about the fallout before inviting me to dance in a room full of cameras." Arman looked up. His voice steady now. "Samir leaked it. We traced the metadata. He paid a journalist through a private consulting firm." Her hands trembled. "Your own brother. He thinks I'm risking the company's name for a scandal." Olia blinked hard. "Is that what I am to him? A scandal?" "No," he said firmly. "You're the only thing I've done right." She looked away. "Then why does it feel like the whole world's pointing at me?" The next morning, the company reacts. The board summoned Arman to a closed-door session. Olia wasn't invited, but she heard the rumors by 10 a.m. Conflict of interest, favoritism, unprofessional conduct. Karen, her original manager, came by with a forced smile and a polite email. "You'll be working remotely while we review the situation." Review, that's how corporate framed exile. That evening, the family divide. Arman confronted Samir in the family estate's library. "You destroyed her reputation," he said. "And for what?" "So I'd fall in line with your idea of image control." Samir sipped his whiskey calmly. "You're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar firm, Arman. You don't date the janitor. You don't hand her a program budget and pretend it's not personal. She earned that role. You know that. I know that. The public doesn't care." "I don't care what the public thinks." Samir's eyes narrowed. "You should, or step down and date in peace." Silence stretched between them. "Is that what you want?" Arman asked. "You want the company more than your brother?" Samir stood. "I want to protect what we built. If you want to throw it all away for some nostalgia-fueled guilt trip, don't expect me to stand by and watch." 1 day later, Olia's apartment, her laptop pinged, an anonymous email. "To Olia Khan, subject, FYI from a friend attachment. Internal board memo, confidential summary. The board is preparing a motion to force Arman into an executive leave, citing personal entanglements and negative media fallout. Vote scheduled in 72 hours. She stared at the screen. No one had asked her opinion. No one had questioned the leak's intent. No one had protected her. Now the only man who ever believed in her, however imperfectly, was about to lose everything for trying. She closed the laptop, then opened it again and wrote the letter that changed the game. She posted it publicly on her LinkedIn profile. A personal, unfiltered letter titled, "No, I'm not a scandal. I used to clean floors in this building. Now I run a program to lift others who started where I did. Not because someone gave me pity, but because someone remembered I had dreams. I am not sleeping with my boss. I'm not here because I'm a charity case. I'm here because I earned it, and because he finally gave me a seat at the table I've been circling for a decade. If your idea of success means stepping only on those who wear suits and have MBA, then you don't understand what building a future really means. No, I'm not a scandal. I'm a second chance. One that should be given to more than just me." It went viral overnight. By sunrise, Olia's post had reached over 2.3 million views. Tech blogs reposted it. Influencers commented. CEO shared it with hashtags like #secondchances and #realleadership. Even a few media outlets issued apologies for publishing the original gossip without verifying facts. But at Orient Tech, chaos reigned. The boardroom was quiet when Arman entered, tie slightly loosened, eyes tired, but sharp. Samir stood with a tight-lipped expression as legal advisors and board members murmured across the long table. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Malik, before we proceed to the vote, the board would like to address the recent public response." A white-haired board member looked up from his tablet. "You're trending, Armin, but for once, it's not because of our quarterly revenue." A younger director chuckled. "Some of our clients called in personally. They loved the girl's letter." Samir looked visibly annoyed. Another member leaned forward. "Did you authorize her statement?" "No," Armin replied. "But I support it, every word. And the CSR pilot. It will continue under her leadership, and I'll step back from any direct supervision if necessary." A pause. The chairman looked around. "Any objections to closing this investigation?" Samir opened his mouth. "Objections," said the white-haired member. "I want to put her on a panel at our next investor conference." Motion carried. Samir's collapse behind closed doors as the board members filed out. Samir cornered Armin in the corridor. "You think this is over?" he hissed. "You embarrassed this family." "I saved the company," Armin said calmly. "You gave her a platform. She earned it." Samir's face darkened. "You've always needed someone to rescue. First it was her. Then it was every sob-story employee you threw into some mentorship scheme. This isn't charity work, it's business." Armin narrowed his eyes. "It's leadership, and it's what you'll never understand." He turned and walked away. Samir didn't follow, not this time. Meanwhile, Aliya's office, yes, office, her desk had been moved again. But this time it wasn't a punishment. It was a corner, office glass walls, a view of the Hudson River, a plaque by the door, Director of Community Development. Karen stopped by with a steaming cup of chai. "You earned this," she said, "but more than that. You reminded us all what this place should be." Aliya took the cup with shaking hands. "I didn't mean to be loud," she said quietly. Karen smiled. "Sometimes being loud is the only way to be heard." Later that day, one final meeting, Armin waited at the rooftop garden of Orion Tower, a rare, quiet place far above the chaos below. Aliya arrived with her hair tied up, wearing the same navy blue blazer from her first week. She still looked like herself. That was the magic of her. Nothing about her changed unless she allowed it. "I read the letter," he said. She shrugged. "It was time. I would have fought for you either way." "I know," she said softly, "but this time I wanted to fight for myself." He nodded, eyes locked on hers. "No more rescuing," she said. "No more guilt. I get it. I'm not your redemption story, Armin. I'm not your unfinished business." He took a breath. "Then what are you?" She didn't answer right away. She looked over the city. "Glittering, broken, beautiful?" "I'm a woman who still doesn't know if she can trust you." His face fell slightly. "But you came." She smiled faintly. "That means I haven't closed the book yet." Flashback, one final memory in her mind. She saw them again, under that mango tree in Rawalpindi, scribbling dreams into a shared notebook. He had written, "We may not have the world yet, but one day I'll build one where you don't have to shrink to fit." She never thought he meant it. But now, maybe he had. The elevator scene letting the world watch the next day. The elevator doors on the executive floor opened to reveal Aliya and Armin standing side by side. Calm, collected, unashamed. People watched. No one whispered. The message was clear. We are equals now. Not secrets, not rumors, not shadows. Media headlined the next morning, "From janitor to executive, the woman who changed Orion Tech's future, and the CEO who finally led like a human." 1 week later, the award no one expected, the annual Women in Tech Resilience Award, was usually given to a startup founder or a well-connected executive's daughter. This year, Aliya Khan's name was announced on stage at a glittering gala in Soho. She didn't even know she'd been nominated. Armin had nothing to do with it. That was the beauty of it. She walked on stage in a pale grey sari, no designer tag, no flashy makeup, and accepted the award with a steady voice. "This award doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every woman who was told she wasn't executive enough, every worker who kept their dignity while scrubbing floors, every outsider who was made to feel they'd never be allowed inside. I used to believe I had to prove I was as good as them. Now I know I was always good enough. The system just wasn't built for me, so I built a door instead." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Armin, watching from the crowd, didn't try to steal the moment. He just smiled. That night the door left open when he dropped her off outside her building. He didn't walk her to the door. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't press for anything. "I'm proud of you," he said simply, hands tucked in his coat pockets. "Not yours to be proud of." She replied. He nodded. "Still am." She paused. "This, whatever it is between us, it doesn't erase what we were. I don't want to erase it. It also doesn't promise what we could be. I'm not asking for promises," he said, "only that you don't close the door before we know. And if we never know," she asked. He smiled faintly. "Then I'll still be glad I got to see you become everything you were meant to be." A pause. Then she said quietly, "Do you still write letters?" He raised an eyebrow. "Not lately." She smiled. "Maybe you should start again." Then turned, walked upstairs and left the door, literally and metaphorically, and locked behind her. Flashback 2 parallel lives. While Armin was studying AI systems in London, Ollia was scrubbing dorm toilets in Vancouver to save for community college. While he bought his first car with investment returns, she missed her bus stop because she fell asleep on the night shift. While he got congratulated in Forbes, she got told to smile more by a store manager who docked her pay for being late. They hadn't just been separated by geography. They'd lived in two different worlds. And yet, somehow, they had found their way back to the same room. 3 days later, a note left on her desk. It wasn't a letter. Just a folded napkin from the cafe downstairs, scribbled with ink. "I ordered your chai the way you like it. Light sugar, extra cardamom. If you sit down across from me, I'll take that as a yes. If you throw this away, I'll take it as a no. Either way, thank you for showing me how to be brave." She stood there holding it. She didn't smile, she didn't cry, she just picked up the napkin and walked to the cafe. At the cafe, no grand romance, just real ones. He stood when she entered, pulled out her chair, didn't speak first. She sat, he poured her tea, they sipped in silence for a minute. Then she said, "I don't need a rescuer." He nodded. "I don't need forgiveness. I'm still scared of being the woman in the back row while you're on stage. I'm scared of being the man who forgets the woman who taught him to feel." Another pause. Then she said, "Let's try not to lose each other again." That was all it took. No promises, no rings, just truth and time. Montage. The months that followed, Ollia mentored 15 entry-level employees from non-traditional backgrounds. She spoke at Columbia about building inclusive leadership pipelines. Armin stepped back from public appearances and started teaching entrepreneurship part-time. Samir took a 6-month leave of absence. Rumor was, not by choice, the CSR pilot became a national model, and every Friday, no matter how busy the week, they met at the cafe. They still hadn't called it dating, but they had learned to sit in the quiet and let love grow in the space where noise used to be. Final scene: the city at sunset. On the rooftop of Orientech, Ollia stood alone, watching the skyline burn gold and amber. Armin arrived late, holding 2 cups of chai. She took hers without looking at him. "You still don't talk much," she said. "Words got me in trouble before." She smiled. "So what now?" He looked out across the city. "Now we see if the world we're building has room for both of us in it. And if it doesn't, then we make one that does." She took a sip. The wind picked up. He reached out slowly. This time she didn't pull away. She laced her fingers into his, and together they stood. The same rooftop where she once felt invisible, now side by side. Not as CEO and former janitor, but as two people who had earned their way back to each other, one truth, one risk, and one shared cup of chai at a time. 3 months later, calm after the storm, the media had moved on. Orientech was no longer the center of a scandal, but a case study in inclusive leadership. The viral moment had passed, replaced by newer controversies, newer faces, but in the quiet corners of the company, where things truly change, Ollia was still building. No lights, no applause, just work. She spent her mornings in meetings with outreach partners and her afternoons helping junior hires navigate their first weeks. Her name wasn't trending anymore, and that was just how she liked it. Until HR sent an unexpected calendar invite, subject, Annual Executive Review, CSR Department time, Friday, 3:00 p.m. Location, main boardroom. She stared at the screen. This wasn't routine. This was evaluation. Real evaluation, and for the first time in months, she felt the old fear creep back. Meanwhile, Armin's growing distance. Things had changed between them, not in any dramatic way, but slowly, subtly. They still met every Friday at the cafe, still shared chai, laughter, quiet conversation, but Armin had grown more distracted, restless, his eyes always on his phone, meetings piling up, investors demanding more time. The board urging him to refocus. It wasn't personal, he insisted, but to Olia it felt like déjà vu. The review a test of more than just numbers. The boardroom was full. Half the faces she recognized. Half were new. They asked about growth metrics, mentorship impact, budget efficiency. She answered all with grace, data, and clarity. But then came a question she wasn't ready for. Do you believe your relationship with Mr. Malik still influences your role here? Silence. Karen, seated beside her, flinched. Alia straightened her back. No, if it ever did, that ended months ago. I don't work with Armin. I built this department with my own hands, and anyone who's worked alongside me knows that. The older woman across the table nodded. Then consider this your final informal review. Congratulations, Director Khan, you've passed probation. There were no claps, no champagne, just a nod, and Olia walked out of that room taller than she ever had. That night, the confrontation they were avoiding, she waited for him outside his office. Not as a partner, not as a former lover, as a woman who deserved the truth. When he finally stepped out, surprised to see her, she said one thing. Are we going to keep pretending this is still working? He looked exhausted. Olia, I'm trying. You were here, she said softly. Then the press died down, the buzz faded, and now it's boardrooms and numbers again. I'm still showing up on Fridays. And I'm grateful, but are you here, really here, or are you slipping back into the life that once swallowed you whole? He rubbed his temples. This company needs me. I needed you too, she said, voice trembling. But I didn't ask you to choose, I asked you to show up. He looked at her, hurt behind his eyes. I don't want to lose you again. Then don't, she said. But if this is just about guilt or comfort or some obligation to protect me, let me go. He didn't reply. And maybe that silence was the answer. The break quiet. No drama, there was no fight. No cruel words. No dramatic exit. Just a message the next morning. Take care of yourself. Friday's table is always open. She didn't reply. She just didn't go that week or the week after. 3 weeks later, a new offer and email arrived from a national nonprofit. Subject: Director Position, Youth Empowerment Alliance. Location: Washington, D.C. Salary: Competitive purpose: Nationwide rollout of community mentorship programs inspired by your work. She stared at the screen. Washington. Olia Khan, Director, her own budget, her own team, no shadows. No, Armin. Rita walked in just as she was closing the tab. You're going to take it. Her roommate said, I don't know. Yes, you do. I'd have to leave New York. You'd also leave everything that once made you feel small. Olia looked out the window. She didn't feel small anymore, but maybe it was time to feel free. Flashback: a different ending. She once imagined reuniting with Armin would fix everything. That love would be enough, but real life didn't offer fairy tales. Real life gave you growth, forgiveness, and moments you had to let go of people you still loved. One final walk through goodbye to the building before her official resignation. She took one last walk through Orient Tech. She passed the janitor closet where she used to take naps between shifts. She passed the 12th floor where she sat at a cubicle too scared to speak up. She passed the boardroom where she earned her place in silence, not scandal. She stopped on the rooftop and sat on the bench where Armin once poured her chai. No tears, no regrets, only gratitude. At the cafe one last Friday he was there. She didn't text him, didn't warn him. But somehow he knew she'd come. He stood when she entered, pulled out her chair. She sat. Washington, he asked softly. She nodded. Next month. He smiled gently. Of course, they'd be lucky to have you. She sipped her chai. Are you okay? She asked him. I'm getting there, he said, slower than you. She reached across the table, not to hold his hand, just to say goodbye. "We did good," she said. He nodded. "We did." 1 month later, departure, the car was packed. 2 suitcases in the trunk, 1 carry-on, and an envelope labeled, "Rent paid 3 months ahead." Alia stood at the edge of the curb in front of her apartment building, looking up at the rust-stained windows one last time. She'd hated this place at first, the moldy walls, the leaky ceiling, the rats that ran through the pipes in winter. But this apartment had been the place where she found herself again, where she'd fought through exhaustion, learned to dress like a leader, cried over chai, wrote her speech that changed everything, and said goodbye to a man she'd loved since she was a girl. And now she was walking away from it all. Not because she was running, but because she was ready. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the headquarters of the Youth Empowerment Alliance stood in stark contrast to Orion Tech's glass towers. A historical building near DuPont Circle, all red brick and character, filled with non-profit energy and controlled chaos. Alia's new office didn't have a river view, but it had light and laughter, and people who asked for her ideas without questioning her credentials. Her first day was a blur of meetings, onboarding papers, and wide-eyed interns who already recognized her from the viral letter. One girl even whispered, "Are you that Alia?" She smiled. "No, I'm just this one." First week and a different kind of loneliness. Her new apartment in D.C. was smaller than she expected, quiet, too quiet. No Rita watching Pakistani dramas in the living room, no chai brewing on the stove, no Armin messaging her on Friday afternoons. For the first time in a long time, she had space, but no one to fill it. She sat on the balcony, knees tucked in, watching the sky bruise purple with twilight. Loneliness, she realized, wasn't always about who wasn't sitting beside you. Sometimes it was about who you used to be. And the silence left behind when you outgrow her. A letter that never arrived. One rainy Tuesday, a brown envelope showed up at her new office. No return address, just her name handwritten in elegant strokes. Inside, "I didn't say goodbye properly, because part of me hoped you'd come back, but watching you walk away reminded me why I loved you in the first place. I lost you once because I didn't fight. I lost you again because this time you didn't need me to. Keep walking, Alia. And if you ever look back, I'll still be proud of you." She folded the letter carefully, tucked it between the pages of her planner, didn't cry, didn't smile, just carried it with her. 3 months later, Ripples, the pilot mentorship program Alia built at Orion Tech, was now being adopted by 2 other firms in San Francisco and Austin. Forbes released a special titled, "The Girl Who Cleaned, Then Changed Corporate America." Alia declined all interview requests. She had work to do. New beginnings, new people. Her new team was diverse, passionate, and fiercely talented. There was Jamie, a single mother with a knack for funding proposals. Omar, a poet-turned-developer from Detroit, and Maya, a shy 19-year-old who could hack her way through any system but blushed when asked to lead a meeting. Alia saw versions of herself in all of them, not the girl scrubbing floors, the girl rising anyway. She mentored gently, firmly, without preaching, and when Maya broke down after being ignored in a strategy session, Alia handed her a tissue and said, "The louder rooms aren't made for you. That doesn't mean you don't belong in them." One unexpected message. It came on a Friday, the same time they used to meet at the cafe. "Armin, just read your latest article on local leadership. Brilliant. The city misses you. Hope DC is treating you well. P.S. Your chai place closed. Nothing tastes right without you anyway." No emoji, no flirtation, just him, still watching from afar. She stared at the message, then typed a reply, then erased it, and instead whispered, "I miss you too." Flashback. What could have been in another life. They stayed together. Maybe she took over a department at Orion. Maybe he carved out time for love before losing himself in legacy. Maybe they figured out how to balance power and partnership. But this wasn't that life. This was the one where they loved each other deeply, and still walked away stronger than they'd ever been. Present, a moment of peace. At the end of a long week, Alia sat in a circle with 10 teenage girls from an underfunded high school in Baltimore. They had just finished a workshop on career dreaming. one girl asked, Miss Olia. Did you always want to do this? Olia laughed. No, I wanted to be a journalist, then I wanted to disappear, then I wanted to be powerful enough to stop asking for permission. Another asked, do you believe in love? A long pause. Then she smiled gently. Yes. But I believe in purpose more. One final glimpse New York, distant and dim that weekend. She flew to New York for a leadership summit. She stayed at a hotel in Midtown, nowhere near Orion's Tower, but late at night she took a cab, just once, to the old cafe. It had reopened under new owners. New colors. She stepped in, ordered a chai, sat at their old table. He wasn't there. She didn't expect him to be. But for a moment she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded napkin she'd carried all the way. If you sit down across from me, I'll take it as a yes. She unfolded it, set it down, sat alone, and smiled, not because he arrived, but because she finally didn't need him to. 1 year later, an award, again the invitation arrived in a velvet-lined envelope. National Excellence in Social Impact honoring Olia Khan, location, Lincoln Center, NYC, dress code, formal time. 7:00 p.m. sharp. She held the card for a long time, not because of the honor, but because of the city and everything it held. Back in the city, a quiet return. The skyline hadn't changed, but she had. Olia stepped out of the Amtrak station into the loud, grimy, beautiful chaos of Manhattan. Heels clicked over pavement she used to sweep. Her suitcase rolled behind her like a loyal shadow. She checked into a small, quiet boutique hotel in Soho. No fanfare, no press, just the version of herself who now moved without needing to ask permission. At Lincoln Center, a seat in the front row. The ceremony sparkled with high-powered names, politicians, philanthropists, CEO. But when Olia walked across the stage, the crowd hushed. Her dress was a deep maroon silk, draped with grace. Her voice, when she began her speech, was clear. This award isn't a symbol of how far I've come. It's a reminder of how far the world has to go. For every invisible worker, every overlooked woman, every forgotten dreamer. She paused. I used to believe power came from proximity, titles, influence, men in corner offices. Now I know true power comes from the woman who refuses to shrink anymore. They stood for her before she even left the podium. After the ceremony, the second encounter, she didn't see him at first. He blended into the crowd like a memory, but then, as she exited the lobby, there he was standing by the stone pillar outside, the cold wind pressing gently through his coat. He looked older, calmer, and somehow lighter. Congratulations, Armin said. Thank you, she replied. They didn't hug, they didn't kiss. They just stood there, watching yellow taxis blur past them. You still drink chai? She asked. Only the kind that ruins all others, he replied. She smiled. There it was, them, still hidden in the cracks of grown-up restraint. The walk through the city that raised and ruined them. They walked side by side through Central Park. No destination, just steps. We rebuilt the CSR program, Armin said. Hired a team. Karen runs it now. She's good. Olia nodded. I'm not CEO anymore, he said. She stopped walking. What? Stepped down 6 months ago. I mentor now, consult, write sometimes. She looked at him, truly looked. What changed? He smiled. I got tired of saving face. Wanted to start saving myself instead. Silence followed, soft and clean. I'm glad, she said. He chuckled. You were always ahead of me. I just left earlier, she said. That's all. A park bench, and the real question. They sat on a bench under a dying tree, its leaves brittle and gold. He turned to her. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we stayed together? She considered the question. No. She said, I used to, but not anymore. Why not? Because the version of me who would have stayed. She's gone now. He nodded slowly. Mine too. More silence. Then she turned to him. But I don't regret us. Neither do I. They smiled, nostalgia without ache, a rare thing. Before they parted, one honest answer. I never stopped loving you, he said softly. She inhaled, exhaled. I know. But it wasn't enough. No, she said. It wasn't, but it was real, and that matters. He reached into his coat and handed her something, a small box, light. She opened it. Inside was a silver pendant, tiny, simple, shaped like a door. She looked up, confused. He whispered, a reminder. That no matter what, you opened yours. She clutched it, not sure what to say, so she said nothing, just hugged him briefly, tightly, then let go. One final scene, the train window as the train pulled out of Penn Station. Alia watched the skyline fade into steel and shadow. She wasn't sad. She wasn't in love. She wasn't waiting for anything anymore. She was arrived. She pulled out a notepad and began writing her next proposal, a new initiative, rural scholarships this time. Her ideas no longer asked for space. They demanded it. The silver door pendant swung softly around her neck. Catching the afternoon light, somewhere in another life she might have stayed with Armin, but in this one she stayed with herself. Years later, people still told Alia's story. They told it in boardrooms as a case study, in classrooms as inspiration, in job interviews as a reminder that grit could outrun privilege if only it was seen. They told it wrong sometimes, made it sweeter than it was, made Armin the hero, made the viral post the turning point, made it sound like a fairy tale. But Alia knew the truth. It wasn't the gala, it wasn't the promotion, it wasn't even the heartbreak. The moment her life truly changed was simpler than that. It was the day she stood on a dirty floor, bleach on her hands, and someone she loved looked at her, and she didn't shrink, she didn't flinch, she didn't pretend to be invisible. She let herself be seen, not as someone's mistake, not as someone's burden, but as herself. And even after he walked away, and later after she did, she carried that moment with her into every room, every role, every stage. She wrote books, built organizations, became a mentor to girls whose stories started just like hers. Quiet, overlooked, tired. She fell in love again too. But that's not this story, because this story was never about who she ended up with. It was about who she became when she stopped waiting to be chosen and started choosing herself. Somewhere in New York, a man named Armin still visits that same rooftop. Sometimes he brings 2 cups of chai, one he drinks, the other he leaves on the bench, not out of regret, but in respect, because he knew what the world took years to realize. She was never just the cleaning lady. She was the woman who built an empire from the ground they told her to scrub.